to introduce tonight's speaker. One of his trusted co-workers has been very persistent in giving up some information here about this person, some fun facts, as that person called them. If you enjoy Raggy or Elvis, please don't talk to him about it. He's a hillbilly and recorded an album in the 90s. I did not know that at all. I did not know that. He's extremely athletic. He plays old boys football, works a whole lot out at the gym, and he's also extremely old. He's turning 50. Yeah, let me hear it. In just a few days. What about that? Okay. You can just sit. I got lots more. No worries. He has emerged as a servant and a leader among great women and men, also great leaders. He has, through the virtue of his character and gracious personality, won my trust, and I believe that is true for many of us, perhaps most of us. He is the leader of the Vineyard Nordic, and I thought, let's just be a little African for a little second here. Let us welcome Dr. Bishop Reverend Flemming Moelhede. Oh. Woo!
Thank you so much. Anything is possible in a world in which a carpenter is raised from the dead. Indeed, not only anything is possible, but by the power of the risen Christ, we can passionately affirm that a new world has broken into this one. This wonderful and amazing carpenter brought another world to us. Another world is already here. Can you believe it? And do you see it? Another world is possible. Another world is necessary. And Jesus came announcing the good news, and he invites us to be a part of it. Not with the leftovers of our lives, but with our entire lives. And with this theme of the summer camp, Imagine Change, we want to call the church to be a church beyond itself, a church for others. We will try to find what God is planting in the Nordic, and we want to water it. To find out what God means by planting is that God is preparing us for something really, really, and here it comes, small. The invitation to imagine change is from the very beginning an invitation to something really small. It is a quiet conspiracy that is destined to change our lives and God's world. And God's strategy has never changed. God's strategy for change has never changed. And Jesus, he let us in on an astonishing secret. God wants to change the world through that which is small, lowly, ordinary, and insignificant. And the revolutions of the small should give us all hope in the Vineyard family. So God has called us as a family to find the small and the insignificant, which has a tremendous transforming power. And why is that? It is because we worship the seed that died. What can we say God's kingdom is like? Jesus said. What story can we use to explain it? It's like a mustard seed, which is the smallest seed planted in the ground. But when you plant the seed, it grows. It becomes the largest of all garden plants. Its branches are so big that birds can rest in its shade. So, changing the world through the insignificant has always been God's strategy. He chose a group of Semite slaves to be the revolutionaries of a new order. He chose a shepherd boy with a slingshot to lead his chosen people. And who would have dreamed that God would choose a baby in a stable to turn the whole world upside down? What a strange way to start a revolution. So to find out what God is planting means that God is preparing us for something really, really small. And with these words, I would like to share with you some thoughts, which are not only thoughts, but a vision that we have worked on as leaders, pastors within our church family for the Vineyard Nordic. Next 5 years, we call it Vision 2020. We found it and look forward to share this with the whole family. And we want to, in the next 5 years, to plant churches. We want to grow healthy churches. We want to impact our communities and our world. We want to make Jesus the greatest influence in everything, in all of our Nordic countries and beyond. And we want to equip the next generation. We hope you like our plan. As we said in the invitation for this summer camp, we dream of seeing people's lives being changed and definitely new churches being planted. And our hope is that throughout this camp, many of you will experience a call from God to plant churches and to find that which is great in the small and insignificant. And we are indeed a church planting family. Thank you, Steve, this morning. And we feel a calling to get back to the roots of what the Vineyard movement is about. We are a church planting movement. There's so many things that we could share of what is going on in the Vineyard Nordic, and I'm so excited. And I would like to highlight the church planters in the Nordic countries. So I'd like to invite the leading couples, pastors for the church plantings in the Nordic countries up here on the stage. If you come, please. It's arranged. It's not spontaneous, it's arranged. So hurry up here as soon as possible. These are some of our friends. Come up here, please. Thomas. And this is just a few of them. And you are really our heroes. You are doing what the Vineyard family is about. And we appreciate it, and we want to pray for you during the week. It's a joy to tell you that this year, if we can have the slide, we will actually plant in the Nordic 4 new churches. We have a vision. We have a vision of planting 20 new churches within the next 5 years. And we were wondering, is that too little, too much? I'm a hillbilly. Are we exaggerating or what? But let alone this year, we will plant in Tampere Vineyard, Copenhagen Vineyard, Oslo Vintage, and a new project which is Sandnes Vineyard. And this is within this year. If we take the next slide, you can see that these are the churches that are plantings right now, church plants for the moment. And if we see the rest of the churches, you can see on the map, this is where we are as a vineyard family and spread all over. There are in total projects, church plantings, churches, 27 vineyards in the Nordic countries. Thomas.
Yeah, so we thought maybe it would be great just to have a quick introduction of the people here. So I promise we won't make it too long. So I'll just have everyone here, if you're ready for it, just to say your name and what city and what country you're in. Can we do that? So let's go from this side.
Signe Margrethe Hafli, we are in Trondheim, Norway.
I'm Daniel, I'm with Signe.
Caleb, I'm with Signe, or Daniel.
Thanks. And your names?
My name is Emma Joy.
Yeah.
My name is Michaela.
Great.
Dag, Bergen, Norway.
Ingrid with him.
Yeah, Henning Boklund and my wife, who's not here this year, Ruth.
Stephen, we're from Køge Vineyard plant. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And Miriam from Køge Vineyard in Denmark.
Odd Sindre from Ålesund, downtown Ålesund Vineyard, Norway. And you? This is Levi.
I'm Trine from downtown also, and this is Eliel.
Hi, I'm Christina from Strängnäs, Sweden.
I'm Julia from Strängnäs, Sweden.
Yes.
Martina, Strängnäs, Sweden.
And you are?
Emmanuel.
Henrik, Strängnäs, Sweden.
I'm Tine Lund from Vintage Vineyard in Oslo, Norway.
And I'm with Tina.
And the one I skipped, the gorgeous boy, is my nephew, August. So, and actually there's two of the plants that are not represented here at the camp. They couldn't make it here. So we asked him just to give a short video presentation. And that's from Tampere and from Sandnes. So we'll just play a short video presentation from those two right now. So go ahead.
Welcome to Tampere. This is the place where we live.
And this is the place where we meet. Welcome to our church.
Daytime. This is a kindergarten. But when we meet, we put more chairs, and this place is wonderful to meet in.
This is the place where kids can play.
And here we have every Sunday school to children.
At summer times, we go to the city center and pray for people and give them some food. Very many have experienced wonderful to pray for sick people at the street. We have seen very many healings on the street, and we are very pleased for that.
We are so happy to be part of the Vineyard family in the future. And this summer we couldn't make to come to the summer camp, but in the future we will come and join with you.
Welcome to Tampere. This is the place where we live.
The Sandnes project by Ingeborg and Brian Murdoch. We are experiencing the ripening of our call to plant a church, and we are writing our vision and ready to start a home group. But what kind of church will we plant? Should we plant a church with the same programs as any other church in our city? There are over 70,000 people who live in Sandnes. The existing churches are reaching a very small percentage of the population. We want to plant a fellowship of disciples, followers of Jesus that don't gather as spectators on Sunday mornings to be fed by one person. We want to pursue a way of doing church that behaves like a strawberry plant, that is, modeling a lifestyle of being with and around Jesus. And what does that look like? Well, our fruit has to be visible, our relationships deep and real, and as the Lord provides growth, we want to spread out into the community with a closely linked network of home groups, just like a strawberry plant would grow. The first century church grew because it was composed of disciples who dared to risk, who let their spiritual fruit be seen, and who gathered together to share in this love that came down from heaven.
Yeah. So, just before we let you guys go, I know that you all have lots and lots of amazing stories, but I just asked Stephen and Miriam just to share one quick story from Curious, so go ahead.
Yes, well, very inspired by what Flemming just said. I thought about bringing some amazing story, but then in this process of finding out, well, wow, a story, one story, short story, what to tell. I came across this woman we have, and she's like a bazillion years older than me. She's like double my age or whatever. And we have this odd group of oldies coming to our group. And she came by, we had this barbecue, and people in Denmark, they like meat and a lot of it, so she came. And she was like, well, what is this? And we're just barbecuing, so, well, can I stay? Yeah, you can stay. And then I invited her for our small group or network group, and she came the week after for that. And then I explained to her, we're going to pray together in a while. And she's like, oh, yeah, cool, yeah, exciting. That's something new. I'll try that. And then the week after, she came back, and she was just like, yeah, just to let you know, I phoned my friends, I phoned my family, I phoned everyone I know to tell them that I found this church that I'm now a part of. And I'm like, well, what church is that? Just so... oh yeah, this is my church, and I'm just like, yeah, wonderful, and we have more stories just like that. So yeah.
Great, thank you so much, guys. As we said, these guys are our heroes here in the Vineyard Nordic, so give them a huge hand as they go down, okay?
And just a note, if you have a church planter hidden inside of you, thinking that at some point you would like to be involved in church planting at some time, at some stage, we as a task force, and that is Ingrid, Thomas and I, would like to invite you to meet with us on Thursday afternoon at 3:30 down that corner, in that corner. Thursday, 3:30. You're more than welcome. Let's read. By this time it was late in the day, so his disciples came to him. This is a remote place, they said, and it's already very late. Send the people away so that they can go to the surrounding countryside and villages and buy themselves something to eat. But he answered, you give them something to eat. They said to him, that would take more than half a year's wages. Are we to go and spend that much on bread and give it to them to eat? How many loaves do you have? He asked. Go and see. When they found out, they said, 5 and 2 fish. Then Jesus directed them to have all the people sit down in groups on the green grass. So they sat down in groups of hundreds and fifties, taking the 5 loaves and the 2 fish and looking up to heaven, he gave thanks and broke the loaves. Then he gave them to his disciples to distribute to the people. He also divided the 2 fish among them all. They all ate and were satisfied. And the disciples picked up 12 basketfuls of broken pieces of bread and fish. The number of the men who had eaten was 5,000. What Jesus is really trying to teach the disciples through this amazing story is that they must learn to live by God's voice, sense His purpose for them, His will, and His presence. Jesus continually tries to teach the disciples this, that I am the bread of life. Whoever comes to me will never go hungry, and whoever believes in me will never be thirsty. Now, the disciples find themselves in a situation which narrows in on the question, what is God going to do through you? What is God going to do through you? The disciples, they find themselves in a place of tension. They can look up and listen to God, or they can look at the overwhelming need which they cannot meet with their own resources. And I think we can easily identify with this situation the disciples found themselves in. We have extremely tight schedules and many tasks which can give us the experience of not measuring up. We too can find ourselves in tension between looking to God and listening, or looking at the hardships of everyday life that await us and awaits us after this summer camp. And what Jesus teaches His disciples is first and foremost to look up to God and ask, what does God say in this chaotic situation? For that is the only correct way to look at any situation. It is the only correct perspective on all the challenges the disciples are faced with. In short, the lesson for the disciples is simply to look up and listen. If the disciples decide to look to the side, all they will see is people in hunger. They will see their own lack of resources. They will see their few coins, their 5 pieces of bread. They will see the 2 fish. And what Jesus models for His disciples and us is how to meet the needs of this world with a new perspective, which completely changes how we look at reality. And it is precisely in this place where the kingdom of God unfolds. What kind of perspective do we have? What kind of perspective do you have? And we can actually get a whole new perspective on how God deals with the people we meet in our everyday life. There is a part of the church and a part of our discipleship which can only be realized through a real encounter with the real challenges of the world. Only when this encounter occurs, the church becomes real. There's something the church will never become unless it attempts to meet our real challenges. So we need to be present in dealing with the real challenges of this world. The church cannot become the church if it doesn't look up and see God's voice in the midst of chaos. And we must call God's future into the present by looking at the not yet as if it were here. We hope for that which we do not yet see. I just love these verses. So we fix our eyes not on what is seen, but on what is unseen. And in Romans, Paul says, Abraham's God speaks of things that do not exist as if they do exist. I love these verses. And if we have God's perspective, then there will always be a confrontation between the visible, and the invisible. And it is precisely this meeting, this confrontation, Jesus invites his disciples into. 12 disciples who meet thousands of people's need with 5 pieces of bread and 2 fish. In several of our churches in our family, church plants of 20 people or so face the various needs of 200,000 people. And it seems overwhelming. But what we must understand today is if that we get hold of the right, correct perspective, then things can start to change. The right perspective is first of all to look up and listen. What does God think? And what will he do through us? What will God do through you? What will he do through you? Is this not what you do when you praise God and his dynamic presence moves deep inside of your mind? Is this not the new paradigm, the new perspective, which is about looking up? It's the exact same God who's present in our daily life that we worship here all day. It's the same God we meet at work, where you study and so on. It's the same God who moves us in worship that we encounter in everyday life. Sometimes we feel that we're in a different world when we are together worshiping, but it's the same God. It is this new perspective which might seem distant on a Monday morning. However, when we meet in worship, we practice this reality. When we worship, this is the reality. Worship is reality. As John Piper said, missions is not the ultimate goal of the church. Worship is. Mission exists because worship doesn't. Worship is ultimate, not missions, because God is ultimate, not man. When this age is over and the countless millions of the redeemed fall on their faces before the throne of God, missions will be no more. It is a temporary necessity, but worship abides forever. And we are sent with this dynamic experience of a living God where worship is the center for the interpretation of God's nature. And worship is not to be understood merely as singing to or about God. Worship is where we enter the heart of the deepest reality. We are sent by a God who's alive and active among us. We can never do something that is more real than to worship him as the creator of all things, through which we experience that he is present among us. And with this experience, he sends us out in the world, and we must look up before we can look out. And if you look up, you can go in any situation and see the traces of God. And we must learn this if we are to be the followers of Jesus. God seeks out people, and we must learn to identify this. We must learn to identify the traces of God in our surroundings. And if you dare to do this, you will experience that looking up is the only right perspective on all the challenges you face. You have 5 pieces of bread and 2 fish, and you can count thousands of people. We would clearly have preferred, as the disciples, 5 trucks with bread and fish, but the miracle doesn't happen until you begin. It happens as you begin to experience what God is already doing in other people. Do we dare to do this? Dare we listen to what God whispers in our souls, in our busy everyday life? Jesus actually reveals himself as an excellent coach when he tells the disciples, go and see what you have, which is actually nothing. And that's in order just to show how limited the resources are and the perspective is. So you look at the two fish and you can only look up to God. A month ago, I had a few days of sickness and being at home, sick, I had a couple call me, a guy called me. I knew them a little, just wonderful people. And he called me from the hospital and told me that they have just received their firstborn child, which they looked forward to in years. But quite soon they found out the day after they transferred to the Rigshospital in Copenhagen, the biggest hospital. And within the next day they found out something was really wrong and he was operated directly. He had he had what is called a small intestine. It's the small intestine that had collapsed within the child. So when they opened this boy up, they found out that this intestine was totally dark. And two surgeons prepared this couple that this doesn't look good. Actually, we can't survive without this intestine. And they were preparing them. And they said, we want to give this a chance of 2 days. And if this is not going to change, they wouldn't continue the treatment. So it was really not good odds, and they were to take their precautions. So there was definitely a risk of not surviving. And he called me as he knew I was a pastor, and he said, could you please come to the hospital and do a child dedication? And I said, of course, and I came into the room, and him and his wife were there, his parents were there, and it's an extremely emotional situation. And I stood there, and they put something over my head, not to smitte, infect the child. And I was standing there with my Bible, and I said, now we're going to do as if we were in church. We're going to do a child dedication in this situation. And behind the mask, I was crying, I was trembling, and we did the child dedication. The nurse went around, took pictures of this small, beautiful boy, and after that we laid our hands on the small boy and we prayed a prayer of healing, that God will just heal this boy. And we felt in that situation that we had nothing. We had no bread, no fish. And prepared for the worst. 2 days after, no, the day after, they opened him up, the boy up again, and this intestine was much lighter. Suddenly, the surgeons could see that it got there was blood running through this intestine. They said that part of this intestine is dead. The doctors, the reason is we don't operate, is that that we need to give it more time. So they gave him 3 more days, and 4 days later they opened him again after the surgery, which only took 30 minutes. The surgeon came out, and he was very, very excited. They have looked in all his intestines, and everything was in best order. Everything that has been dead is not longer dead. And friends, I know you're watching this on live stream, and we want to continue bless you as a family and your child. And this disease only happens 2 or 3 times a year, and the doctors were using words like miracle. Since then, by now a month later, he has gained 800 kilograms. So he's a very, very big boy now. And during the short heat wave in Denmark, he was at the beach for 6 hours. And it's just amazing. And the parents tell me that they are filled with humility and gratefulness. And we can only... This was a situation of having nothing, but looking up to God. We need that perspective. And let me just say that Torbjørn, as you heard yesterday morning, is really a role model of mine. You are Torbjørn. And I was so curious. A few months ago, you told me that one morning you wanted to pray to God. You prayed to God that you want to see that the fields are white for harvest. You want to see it. And after that prayer, and then Torben could tell so many stories of what God is doing. And that day, just story by story of what God is doing. And it's just amazing. And I got excited. I want to see the same. And it's just been amazing 2 last months for me. It's been exciting to work with Vineyard, with church, and so on. But what has excited me far the most is to see that God is doing things, and He really can use a little guy like me. I met a friend. I'm allowed to say this story. I met a friend in gym, and just met him and asked him, would you like to be a part of our new small group? Anna and I has, together with some new friends, Flemming and Margaret, planted a small group and invited him to our small group. And he came to our small group, and he's just been changing so many things in his life. I have another friend that I've known for a few years that has no experience of church whatsoever than the normal 3 times a life, and he suddenly called me and said, "Can I visit you?" And we had a cup of coffee, and we talked about life and things that I cannot share here. But I told him the story. I told him the story of Jesus, how we are created in His picture, that He died and He rose again. What the life with Jesus is really about, and we need to tell the story. And I asked him, and I told him simply, you need that. You need faith in your life. And he said, yes, that's what I need. That is really what I need. And I prayed for him, and the Holy Spirit fell upon him in my living room, and he was shaking, and he was surprised. And if I could, I would tell you more about that exciting story, but I can't. What I can tell you is that I have another friend who's here tonight. His name is Bo. I met him we've been friends for 24 years ago. I met him on the streets of a town where I was part of a church plant, and I invited him home, to my home. And then, where are you? Bo, are you somewhere here? Here, Bo. And then half a year later, Bo was in my apartment when I came home. Anna had opened the door, and there he was, and he said, "Thank you for the invitation." Bo received Jesus in his heart, And a couple of years ago, I married Bo and with his wife, Bettina. Did I say something wrong? Yes. I did. It's always like that. I'm not intentionally funny, so thank you. So Bo and I, we and shame on you. It's disgusting and pathetic. So Bo married Bettina, and what Bettina said, and I'm allowed to say all of this, that Bettina said, I will never set my feet in church. Right? Yeah. And a couple of years has gone since then, and then some changes in her life, and some challenges, hardships, really made her open to God. And I was just waiting for that to happen. I've been praying for you since you met and since you married. And, you know, finally one day Bettina called, and Bo was with her, called and said, this is terrible situation right now. And I said, well, you need one thing you never tried before, and that is to let Jesus into your heart. So now it is time, I told her. So on Wednesday, you come home to me, you have a cup of coffee, I'll tell you the Bible from the beginning to the end, and you will receive Jesus, and he will relieve you from anxiety. And that happened. So we had coffee, and I told her the story. And you know, we need to tell the story. I was so inspired by a guy called Cesar Kalinowski from the stage, who is leading something called 3DM, that we need to tell the story. The whole story. We need language for telling people about what Jesus is about, what it means to be created in his picture, what it means that he died on the cross, what it means that he is resurrected, and what it means that we are called for wonderful and amazing hope. So I told her, I went through that story, and she understood. And then we prayed for her, and God's Spirit came. And that was a new thing for her. And she was trembling, and something really deep inside happened in her. Well, the process is going the right direction, and there are still challenges. But when I saw her the next time, I could see on her face, something has happened. What has happened, Bettina? And she was had a totally different appearance. And when she went to the doctor, he said, what happened to you? And God is just amazing. And this has just been the best in my life in the last month of following Jesus, to see that this can really happen. I have really nothing, but I believe in telling the story, and I believe in challenging people. And although I have nothing, I know that people hunger for Jesus, and he can change even the worst situation. And our mandate as humans is that we do cooperate with God for his kingdom. And it has been this way ever since creation. We are his closest collaborators, so we are actually taking part in a creation agency. When our reality and God's kingdom meet, it creates a very special synergy. And we can only meet our world when we are in right relationship with God and have the proper perspective. When we grow into the new paradigm, a synergy arises. It's a struggle, it's difficult, and many times we are mistaken. What does God want to do through you? And you may feel you have nothing, but God wants to change people through you. Secondly, and I'll stop now. Secondly, those who succeed are those who begin. That's quite simple. We have to step out. like Sarah and Thomas, Lorentzen, and Odense, are you here? Yeah. Just a little more than a month ago, we had a release party in Odense Vineyard. Fantastic party where they were released as a church. They weren't 5 pieces of dry bread and 2 smelly fish. They were 5 adults and a baby. And little less than 3 years ago, Thomas and Sarah, they went to the 3rd largest city in Denmark to plant a church. And Jesus told them and their friends to invest what they had and no more. They went ahead and began the work, and they succeeded. Today, there are actually more than 100 in the network. And that day of celebration they had recently, there were so many stories from you guys in Odense of what God has done in your life. It's simply amazing. You can talk about how Odense Vineyard has completely revolutionized your lives through the power of Jesus. So Jesus only asks you to invest what you have. He does not ask you to invest more than you have. Although what you have seems insignificant, it will grow exponentially. And therefore, you can never have too little. You can never have too little. And remember, some of you were attending the summit. One of our friends told us, you have all what it takes. Vineyard family, we have all what it takes to change and to transform through the power of Jesus. And God will multiply our 2 fish and 5 pieces of bread. I really believe that. We just need to put them before Him, and then the miracle can happen. And what has God called you to do? Yeah, just end here. And I talked just a little about worship. And worship is a core value of us in our family, as for many other churches. And it has been quite challenging, although we have fantastic worship these evenings. It's really challenged in our churches and local churches. So we have actually talked about that. We tonight would like to invite up in the front everyone who is involved in worship in the Nordic. And if you're a guest here tonight, you are so welcome, coming from another church or in the local area. And if you're involved in worship, we'd like to invite you up. And could we stand together and pray for everyone here that are involved in worship? They are bringing the true perspective to us daily. So please come forward. Are you involved in worship in your church, or wants to be involved? Please come forward, and we'll take some time to pray for you. And can we have some of our prayer teams come up, and small group leaders come up and lay hands on them, and we will bless them.